I'm very good, thank you. I'm very good on this pleasant autumn afternoon. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome back to the Association Transformation Podcast. You were missed.
I think I was only gone 1 week, but thank you. That's very
You're
kind of
right.
you
You weren't
to
really
yeah.
missed. We
I
we
wasn't
held
really
up just
missed.
fine.
I wasn't
We
really
held up
missed. No.
just fine, just fine. But I know you're about to gallivant all over the world, headed to South Africa, and it's a busy week ahead. I have a busy week. Thanks for asking. I'm doing a session that I wanted to talk to you about.
Okay, go for it. Talk to me about it. Talk to me about
So I have a client. They are doing a staff leadership retreat for their chapter staff and national staff, committee staff. And they've asked me to lead a session on managing board and staff interactions, setting boundaries and helping staff say no and understand what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And I feel like I pitched this same session to a couple of different groups a few times, but now someone's had enough experiences where staff are
it.
being put in inappropriate situations or,
Wow.
called at 2 o'clock in the morning and asked for minutes. Or, they've given me a few examples, but are staff still really being treated like this?
Yeah, 100%.
Ugh,
100%. I have
ugh.
I think behavior is getting worse. I think I've got I've had a couple
Even
of
with
clients.
even with the cancel culture, people are still treating each other like this.
I think there is a prevailing culture within our sector that suggests that membership organizations and people who work for membership organizations are are what we would call in the UK, we would say they were fair game.
Yeah.
They are open to verbal abuse. I
Well,
think
and
it's
emotional abuse
yes,
and yeah,
yes.
exploitation. I think back, it was maybe 2 years or 3 years ago now, where Amy Biedenharm and I, hello, Amy, we pitched a session about this, and it was deemed too negative. And so
Mm-hmm.
they said no to our session. We didn't get accepted, and yet we realized this was staff asking for this type of transparent conversation, not to not to demonize the members, but to ask for, to ask for help, to ask for language, to ask to understand, why am I so blurry?
I don't know. You've kind of got out of focus. You moved, and
Oh,
your camera moved with you, and then you went all out of, all out of focus. No, no, it's
but
okay. You can stop rocking back and forth now for the.
that,
You're back in
that's my
focus.
high-tech solution. That's my high-tech
Just keep
solution.
moving till the camera catches up with me.
Anyway, I feel like staff have been asking for help for years and maybe decades, maybe forever.
Yeah, and I
But
think I think it's about, and I think you're absolutely right. I think people are ready to. Unfortunately, it's taken this long, but I think people are now unwilling to tolerate um,
yeah,
the assumption that as membership professionals, we're kind of convenient targets for people's
yeah,
frustrations. Um, and I'm not just talking about, I'm not just talking about explicit sort of verbal abuse. I mean, emails that are laced with cynicism. You get
yeah,
social media pot shots, you get, arguably slanderous comments,
yeah.
about our decision making, about our behavior, about our performance. And I don't know, there's this kind of there's this myth that it is acceptable for our
Yeah.
associate for your membership body to be on the receiving end of your frustrations. Quite frankly, what seemingly seem to be people's frustrations about life in general.
Right. I feel
Um,
like the less authority or less control they have about of their real life situation, the more
it plays out in
anger and
the yeah,
abusiveness they bring to their nonprofit volunteer
yeah,
roles.
yeah, yeah,
We'll have to
absolutely.
research that correlation in another white paper. But is there also the dynamic of the staff executive working for the board, i.e., those who very well may be the most abusive, and not knowing how to stand up for their staff or even how to stand up for themselves?
Yeah, well, I think this goes back to this. I'm not a fan of servant leadership because I think servant leadership lends itself all too easily to servile
Ooh,
relationships. And, being a member of a board of directors, being on a committee, volunteering your time is not a free pass for incivility. And
yeah.
yet, I think there is a dynamic, an unhealthy dynamic that is fueled
Yeah.
by the volunteer paid staff relationship that undermines that relationship. Because I'm a volunteer, I have democratic rights. I'm giving up my time. That gives me some kind of, like I say, some kind of free pass to behave in such a way that actually would be wholly unacceptable
Yeah.
in your own place of work.
Right.
I see the way people perform in boardrooms, and I think, well, if you were doing that in your own work environment, you would be fired.
Yeah. 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 Ugh.
So why is it tolerated if I'm a volunteer in a membership organization? And look, we're not
Well, and
saying
who's the most complacent? Who's the most complacent? The other volunteers, the other board
always,
members,
because
or the executive staff?
I would say other board members, because they're always
Yeah.
pleased that they're not on the receiving end of it. Because
They
ultimately,
they use the staff as human shields.
yeah, yeah, let's call it out. Let's call it out.
Oh my God.
If you're walking into a board environment and you think let's be clear, we're not talking, criticism is healthy. Scrutiny is essential. I need people to
It's the
be
foundation of
healthy
our
challenge.
relationship. Yeah, it's the
Absolutely. Well, me
foundation
and
of our
you,
relationship.
constructive. We talk a lot. We've done sessions, we've done podcasts before about constructive conflict is
Yep.
inherently a positive experience for everybody because it brings out creativity, healthy challenge, makes us think of things differently, creates different perspectives.
Yeah.
Disparagement, contempt, casual abuse,
Yeah.
all those are corrosive.
Passive
And sadly,
aggressive.
yeah, and sadly, I think it is I think it is a result of one, boardroom bullies, and there are plenty of boardroom bullies out there, and let's not pretend otherwise. But I also think it is this this intersection of volunteerism and professionalism because I'm giving up my time that affords me to behave in a certain way. Now, this is no by no
Yeah.
means everybody. It's most it's a very small minority, but it only
But
takes
it
one
poisons the
person's
well so
absolutely.
so completely. Yeah. Okay, so we could talk about how terrible this is and share stories and anecdotes for the whole podcast. But in a commitment to solutions, in a commitment to giving people the tools and empowering those who may be experiencing this with a new approach, with a new look. I think we need to tackle this from two perspectives. What if you are that volunteer or that board member who's being treated this way by another volunteer or board member? How do you handle that? And then from a staff perspective, if you are being treated unfairly, inappropriately by a board member or volunteer, because their paths to resolution are different. How does another board member, a junior board member or a committee member, how do they, I don't know, raise their hand? How do they get this to stop?
Well, I think it's very difficult. I think in a culture that's perhaps you've come into and you're seeing that the culture tolerates bad behavior. It's
Yeah.
very difficult, particularly, and I've seen this, I'm going to call it out, in I've seen this a lot I know I don't care, in medical associations in particular, right?
Okay. Oh, you
Where
mean with the, again,
where
yeah.
there is
Okay.
a distinct hierarchy in the medical environment that I then see brought into the board environment. And it is usually the case that the most senior medical professional is given misplaced deference in the board environment. There is an assumption because they are the most senior in the hospital or the research institute in which they
Yeah.
are working, that somehow that affords them an authority in the boardroom that they don't have. And So if you're coming into that type of environment where um, a fear of being of being undermined, of fear of being
Yeah.
ridiculed, of being targeted,
Dismissed.
dismissed, it's incredibly difficult to try and overcome that. That's when you do need to have, I think, you do need to have protocol, rules in place, written protocol that allow you to have something to fall back on. I talk a lot,
Yeah.
and you've heard me say this when we've been in boardrooms together. I'd much prefer that we can be adult and we can just bounce
Yeah.
off each other and call each other out and say, "Hey, come on now, that's unnecessary," and it'll all be fine. But sometimes we do need to have that written protocol that says, "This is what we agreed to. This is our code of conduct. These are our meeting rules. You've signed up to this because by virtue of being a member of the board or member of a committee,
Yeah.
and therefore this is not an appropriate way to behave." Now, if you've got that, sometimes that can take the sting out of the heat, out of the environment. You
The
can say, well,
policy
actually,
can be the bad guy to bring a stop to
absolutely,
it. Yeah.
absolutely. I think if you don't have written protocol that guides them, that articulates clearly how you will behave together, an exchange of expectations on what is good practice, then I think as somebody who is experiencing uh, bad behavior, then I think then I think I would expect other senior members of a board, other senior executives to step in and
Yeah.
intervene on that person's
Yeah.
behalf.
Yeah.
Because if I'm in an environment where there's no safety net for me and basically it's a free for all, hey, good luck. We're all in
Well,
it for
then there's
ourselves.
no trust, there's no honesty, there's no healthy challenge. I mean, you and I have written a multitude of whistleblower policies and
Hmm.
governance packages that include codes of conduct and all of these things that we need, all of these policies that would provide leadership, both volunteer and staff leadership, the tools to address these type of challenges. But let's not pretend that having those policies is any type of protection. It gives you it gives you the steps to take when it's happening. But I don't
100%.
find a correlation between the organizations that have the paperwork in place
No.
and the behaviors of those humans at at these events, at these tables, in these conversations.
Do you
So I wouldn't call them a deterrent. I would call them a path to execute your reactions
100%?
after it's happening.
100%, 100%. So then we go back to the piece around training, down and induction. When you volunteer, it's not fair. It's not fair to volunteer for a role and not be given training and support.
Yeah,
If you find yourself, listener, if you find yourself putting yourself forward and people are so grateful that you volunteered, they're so happy that you've come on board, but then they fail to give you any meaningful guidance on what's
yeah,
expected of you, of what is, demanded of you in terms of behaviors, in terms of potentially your legal obligations, as well as the cultural expectations of you in that role, that's a big red flag. That's a big
yeah,
red flag. And I think you're absolutely right. Having written codes of conduct or transparent complaints processes, or you're absolutely right. They should only serve to reinforce the culture, and that
yeah,
culture needs to be explained in your induction process.
yeah.
But crucially, it needs to be reinforced. If I see bad behavior, call it out immediately. How often do you
Yeah.
see people going,
Consequences are what change behavior, not policies.
absolutely,
But
absolutely? I mean, I had trying to think how best to speak about this example without, and I obviously can't name the client, but a client, I was I I was privy to an email recently from a disgruntled member who doesn't like the strategic direction of the organization.
okay.
And they made their complaint. They made their complaint eloquently in an email. But then they concluded that email by saying, clearly, the strategic direction of this organization is being driven by the self-interest and the self-interests of the senior management team and the senior leaders around the board table. And I thought, oh my God, right. So this chap now has basically just labeled himself, or labeled them, whichever way around it is, committed libel, because he'd written it in a formal work email with from his work email address and with his work letterhead email signature. So it was from him in a formal capacity. And the board's instinct was to say, oh, that's just him. That's how he behaves. Oh, don't worry. He's all bluff. He's all noise and bluster. And it's like, no, no. There could be serious consequences for what this guy is saying in his email and how he is saying it and how he's concluded that email.
Yeah.
But people are more willing to just sort of say, oh, dismiss it. But actually, they should have
people
been
are people are adverse to conflict, which is
always,
odd given how
always.
much they feed these fires and how much they pick and
Yeah.
peck at each other.
Now, in that scenario, they should have reinforced their code of conduct. They've got a code of conduct for members,
Yeah,
and it says you won't commit libel. You
of
won't
course
be
they have one. Yeah,
disparaging. You can challenge, but you will not be personal. Of course, and he did his, he had made his argument perfectly well. And up until I read that libelous statement, I was on board with him. And as soon as he did that, his whole credibility and the argument and the strength of his argument just fell away straight away because he did
yeah,
himself and his argument a complete disservice.
yeah,
But with no consequence because we don't want to do that because we don't want to dismiss him from the membership because it might upset some people.
yeah.
I mean, come on, come on.
We're
Why
so
is
thankful that people are volunteering. We're so thankful that people are joining and showing up that we turn a blind eye even when there are policies in place. And I don't think, obviously, we don't appreciate the true impact that's having on the others who see this, on the precedents
yeah,
being set and the
yeah,
behavior that is now being internalized into this organization's culture. And staff see that too.
yes,
Staff see that
yes.
too.
Hmm.
And, I think we can, on the other side of this, I think the harder situation to manage is when you are a junior staff person or the CEO. We've seen it happen at all levels. When you are treated inappropriately, either in private, in front of the board, whatever it may be, and the course of action is unsure, whether you speak up at all is unsure, who the organization values most and is going to support. The staff side of this is even stickier, is even more delicate and more uncomfortable.
Which is when you need a strength of character in terms of your executive leadership.
Yeah.
If as the chief executive or a member of the senior leadership team, you are seeing you are seeing junior staff shouldering levels any abuse, then that is wholly unacceptable, and that is when I that that's what leadership is, people. That's what
Yeah.
leadership
Yeah.
is calling out the bad behavior.
Yeah.
What
I mean,
is
and
it that we need,
you and I both know a CEO who stood up to her board and said, "You will not speak to my staff that way. You will not treat
Yes,
my
we do.
staff that way."
Hmm.
And
Yes.
I was, as often as a consultant as I offer to be someone's human shield, I was very inspired by the foot that she put down and said,
Yeah.
"Enough.
Hmm.
This is not appropriate." And then when staff came to her and said they were not comfortable going to that meeting
Yeah.
or traveling with that board member, she understood. I don't yet know how it plays out in terms of the board's behavior being corrected, but she did stop and say, "This is not appropriate. You will not treat my team this way."
I think and absolutely, and I think that was what was so strong about that was she was quite clear that it's a healthy challenge, scrutiny about performance and decision making, 100%, because staff are in the room, they're the experts on the day doing the day job. They expect to be challenged. They do not expect, and they should not expect, to be abused.
Yeah, yeah,
And yet, that seems to be, as I said at the head of the conversation, that it seems to be an increasingly acceptable dynamic in the membership environment. And worryingly, when I, sometimes I think people think that I'm really bullish and they worry about me. A lot of the times people do say, "Oh, you will be sensitive when you speak about something, Andrew." And it's like, actually, it's not because I'm insensitive, it's because I will not tolerate such awful, awful human behavior. This is nothing about roles and this is nothing about authority. This is just about
Yeah.
bullies.
Yeah. So let's define for staff. I mean, that's who our audience is, majority association and nonprofit staff.
It is
What's
now.
the kind?
No,
Yeah, you're
all the
right.
volunteers
The
are going,
board
my
members have
God,
all jumped off. The
we're
board
leaving
members have
now. Yeah.
all hung up. Yep. What what is some of that questionable behavior that they may try to normalize? They may try to, excuse away. I know I encourage staff not to give members, period, their cell phone numbers,
Yeah.
and only handle association communications during business hours, whatever that means for your association. Um, I tell constantly in staff leadership programs that the board, the members, the volunteers, you can be friendly, but they're not your friends.
100%.
I want you to know their spouse's name or whatever sport their kid likes, but I don't want you to overshare about your life. I don't want you to become over involved in anything at the personal level, because it's not just when you're being treated poorly, it's almost when you're being treated like a friend and therefore being asked for things that are not yours to
Yeah.
share, or
hmm
asked to be
hmm
involved in areas that are not your jurisdiction because that member knows you and is using you to circumvent processes, procedures, committees, whatever it may be.
Gossip. Do not engage. Do not let, no, do not engage in gossip. That which I think leads on from that point you're making. Over familiarity can
Yeah.
breed contempt, but it can also fuel gossip. And if you get sucked into, and members love to gossip, because they're humans, and humans love to gossip. You cannot, as a staffer, you cannot get sucked into that. You cannot be a confidant for people's opinions of other people.
Yeah.
That is a big red line because again, as soon as you get professional respect, as soon as you get a sense that professional respect is lost, um, well, that professional respect is the foundation for every association's every
Yeah.
membership body success.
Well,
Um,
and everything you say, everything you put in an email, everything you text, you've put out into the universe, and it will and can likely come back to you.
oh, it will. It always does. It
Um,
always does. And so, actually, with that, I think there's a piece around as well, recognizing confidentiality, and when confidentiality is being
Broken?
broken, yeah, ignored. I think again, you as a staffer have an obligation to confidentiality and to the organization. Um, it's not acceptable if you see or know of volunteers sharing information with members that could be commercially
Yeah.
sensitive, could be well, it could be all sorts of sensitivities attached to it. Or quite frankly, it doesn't really matter what the issue is. If it's confidential, it's confidential.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I think as a
And
staffer as well. Sorry, I was just going to say I think if as a staffer as well, if you're going into the board space and you don't feel that you can contribute as an equal, for me that is a red flag as well because you're coming into the no, I appreciate the people who are maybe relative, maybe junior or inexperienced in their roles. A lot of this comes with confidence of experience, and I get that, I understand that. But I think understanding if you don't fully appreciate what the role of the board is and what your role is in relation to that, and therefore what the relationship and the dynamic is, you're unlikely to be willing to contribute to robust discussion
yeah.
and
Yeah.
and to contribute to an informed decision making. If you feel you're in an environment where you can't speak up, that is a red flag as well, because you should
Yeah.
be able to. You should. If you're in the space, you're in the space for a reason, and it's not to
Yeah.
observe.
Now, when I identify a healthy staff culture by the ability to disagree, by the ability to say no, and by the opportunity to, for your perspective to then be included at an equal weight.
Yeah.
The most often I have staff who don't know how to say no, who don't know how to say, oh, sorry, it's not my job to make you officers dinner reservations, or
Mm,
sorry,
mm-hmm.
volunteers, it's not my job to bring you copies of everything that we've emailed you over the last 3 months. It's not, to say no in a respectful way that then doesn't antagonize, that doesn't kick the dog to then come back at you.
And if that dog does come back at you, to carry on with that metaphor, if
That terrible metaphor.
then you've, as a staffer, if that happens, because you're right, I shouldn't be. If a director or a board member hasn't, or a committee member or whomever hasn't read the papers you've sent them, that's on them.
Yeah,
That's their responsibility. It's not yours. If they've asked you to do, now, it may be one off. Oh, do me a favor, because we're in your office environment. Can
sure,
you print
sure.
something off for me? Yeah, of course I can. No problem. There you go. Print. There you go. Thank you. But if it's a case of, actually, I've forgotten my board pack, and can you just write that up for me, blah blah blah, whatever, and then you say no, and they come back at you with aggression, passive aggression,
Yeah,
um,
yeah,
then that's a big red flag that you need to then talk to your
yeah,
your
yeah.
managers about, because that's what may seem trivial in the moment soon becomes a kind of drip feed of negative
Yes.
behaviors, and ultimately
It will fester. It
yeah,
will
it
fester.
will corrode morale. You will burn out, because you will burn out with anxiety and tension, not necessarily with workload. And I think it's really,
Mm.
again, self-awareness and knowing how you feel when you are with volunteers. Be aware of that. Be alert to that. If you're feeling pretty cool, pretty relaxed, pretty calm, engaged, that's how you should be feeling. If you are
Don't
feeling,
feel too relaxed. Don't feel
no,
too relaxed. Don't
no,
think
don't be
you're
horizontal.
one of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, absolutely, absolutely. Don't be horizontal and think you're amongst your mates. Absolutely. But,
I've never
but,
heard that before.
well, horizontal, you're lying down, you're so relaxed, you're
I know
sleeping
what
almost.
horizontal means,
Right,
thank
okay,
you.
I'm
I've
just
just
saying,
never
right, okay,
heard.
yeah, right, okay, well, okay, fine. Yeah, right. So listener, what we're experiencing here is a drip feed of negative behaviors toward me, and it's corroded my morale. If, however,
You
you're
know,
feeling anxiety, like I do before I record this podcast, usually, if you're feeling tension, if you're feeling just physically, you're holding yourself differently, be aware of it, understand it.
you know what's going to cause you real anxiety?
I
Uh,
can't
the
even begin to imagine. Go on, what's that?
the football
Oh,
game tonight. Because your Bears, your
yeah.
Chicago Bears,
Oh, they're my bears now. They're my bears now that they're winning. They're my bears.
you've flown to the United States to see a Bears football game. I mean, they're your team, right?
More than once. More than
You
once.
have a
Yes, I do.
helmet
Yeah.
on the shelves, the few shelves that we get to see of your life. You have a helmet.
The shelves of my life.
The sh
A
the sh
London Underground sign and a bear's helmet. There you go. The shelves
and a
of my
Bears helmet.
life.
That's
Yeah.
that's how we know you. And they will face off against the Washington Commanders today. I think both teams are suitably inconsistent, and who knows where the heck we're going to end the season. So it's kind of a fun
Consistently
roll of the dice.
inconsistent. That's
Yeah.
pretty much how I would sum up being a Bears fan. Consistently
I mean,
inconsistent.
consistent disappointment and consistently inconsistent joy. Yeah.
Indeed. Indeed. Yeah,
So we'll see
whatever.
what comes of
Whatever.
tonight. But I mean, we're prepared to, to beat you badly. And if you wanted to put a little waiver, a wager down, I'd be happy to.
Yeah. No, I know you would. But it's not going to happen.
Why? Come on.
Not doing it.
You're already out of the Survivor League this season, I noticed.
Yeah, that lasted the first 2 weeks. Yeah, well,
Your
although
picks are,
in fairness, one of those weeks is because you didn't put down my pick,
I know.
right? I got kicked out on week 2 because week 1 you didn't put down my pick for me.
Oh, I
So,
know, but I did pay for your entry, so I figured it
oh
was
my
all
God.
water under the bridge. The moral of this story is that human relationships are complex,
Yeah.
and we engage in human relationships within our volunteer environments, within our associations, but there are boundaries, there are guides and rules of engagement. And if you are being treated poorly, you need to follow the procedures in place. You need to speak up. You need to stand up for yourself. Um, and uh, and this type of behavior, as pervasive as it's becoming, is not acceptable. And as a staff person, especially, I implore you to speak to your senior person, whoever you report to. If you are the chief executive, I implore you to seek peer support, to speak to a consultant or someone else who can help you develop the right protocols and procedures. Don't live like this, I guess, is
No.
what I'm asking.
No, I was going to say, and if you can't talk to anyone else, just drop me an email. I'll gladly talk to your
Yeah.
members of your board for you. No problem at all. Free of charge.
Oh dear. Yeah. Andrew will handle the board. I will work with the staff,
Hmm.
and he will become another person non grata for a board that doesn't want to be corrected.
Yep. Yep. Add them to the list. Add them to the long list
Add
of
him to the list.
ex-clients who didn't like being told the way it was.
There you go. There you go. Well, safe travels, my friend.
Thank
I
you.
will not wish you good luck this evening. And whether or not you put a wager down on it, I will remind you constantly of our victory.
Oh, I cannot wait
So
until we
until next
record
time.
next week. I can't wait until we record next week. Oh, I cannot wait.
Dang. Oh, goodness. All right. Well, until then, until next time, put your members and your mission first.